Ready.
It's good?
Yep.
Okay. So, I want to speak about a topic tonight with you guys. I think this is the 4th or 5th time we met. Thank God it's been amazing. You guys have been really incredible listeners. It's been interesting just getting to have the chance to teach women and not men. And I was like startled by how well you guys listen and the focus that you guys have. I'm not used to that with my male students. So that's been good. So I want to talk about a subject tonight, which I think is probably my favorite subject to talk about. Hopefully there's a lot of good stuff that's going to come out of tonight's class, and it's going to make you think about the Torah in a brand new way. I remember when I read these things and I heard these things for the first time, it really like awakened my soul, and it helped me realize a lot of deep things that maybe I thought I knew, but I never really saw it necessarily spiritually, and it just was so real for me. It transformed my whole way I thought about myself. It transformed the whole way I thought about my relationship with Hashem, and it transformed definitely the way that I saw the Torah. So thank God we're moving from Bereshit to Shemot, right? The book, the first book of the Torah to the second book. So just quickly, the first book of the Torah, Bereshit, is talking about creation, not just creation of the universe, but the Torah says, and the Gemara says, that every human being is a world. So many people don't realize that when the Torah is speaking about the beginning of the world, it's also speaking about the beginning of you. That just like this is the world starts, this is how a person starts also. So there's a lot of deep things that come out of that. How are the connections? Thank you. And then we see the Avot, right? Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the first Jewish people. That also was a birth. That was the birth of the Jewish people. That was also a type of birth. So all of Bereshit is dealing, so to speak, with creation, with birth. Okay? So the Ramban, who was a very big Kabbalist from 1,000 years ago, he says something amazing. He says that truthfully, the only reason we learn the whole first book of the Torah is for the second book of the Torah. Meaning, in and of itself, we don't need it. But we do need it to understand the second book. And so therefore we have to have this whole book. So what's so important about the second book that we need the whole first book? So the answer is this book is called Shemot. If you look in English, it's usually translated as Exodus, which is not at all what it means. Shemot means names. So we're going to have to find the connection tonight about what does names have to do with leaving slavery. Okay? So the Ramban has a very famous saying, and he uses this throughout all of his explanations of the Torah, which is Maaseh Avot Siman Lebanim, that the actions of the fathers is a sign or an omen for the children, which means, in essence, that every single thing that happened to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and even in the beginning of creation, was a sign for what would happen to the Jewish people in the future. And whatever happened to the Jewish people in exile in Egypt is a sign for what's going to happen to us at the end of time. Meaning that we only learn about everything before us so we can understand who we are, which is kind of part of what I want to speak to you about tonight. So really it's to set a stage and a context for this book of Shemot. Now what does the Ramban say is the whole book of Shemot about? He says there's two main things going on. Galut and Geula. Exile and redemption. And this is the essence of the Torah. It's speaking about exile and redemption. Now usually when people think of exile, they think we're not in the land of Israel. That's the exile. But this is the most superficial, most artificial extension of the exile. But this is not the essence of the exile. The Baal Shem Tov says the exile is of yourself. That we have been exiled from who we really are. We don't know who we are anymore. And all of our lackings and all of our difficulties and all of our challenges are not coming from the events in our life. They're coming from the fact that yourself is in exile. It's a very deep thought. And so therefore this whole book of Shemot about the Jewish people in Egypt is an analogy collectively for your individual life and your exile in Egypt and you're having to leave Egypt and you're having to go to the land of Israel, which is like you reaching your potential and finding your highest self and connecting to it. So it's a very deep, it's a very personal idea, and it's very powerful. So this is what I want to speak about tonight. The Zohar says something very interesting. The Zohar has a very famous passage where it says, woe to the people. Not woe like wow, but woe like nebach, I don't know how to say it in English, like unfortunate for those who they read the Torah and they think it's stories. What does that mean? I thought the Torah is just stories. I thought that's what it is. So what is the Zohar saying? So the Zohar says that these stories are like they're like the body of a soul. Right? Those stories are just, so to speak, a framework or a setting, and there's a much deeper, much more genuine, much more profound inner reality that's taking place within the Torah. And woe to those who just see the skeleton, who just see the body of the Torah, and they're not tasting the sweetness of the Torah. They don't know what's really going on the inside. A good mashal that I heard, just for us to kind of understand that's not so abstract, the Midrash says that Hashem created the Torah and then He created the world. So why did He create the Torah first? Because the Torah is like a blueprint. Hashem is like an architect. Hashem created a blueprint, which is called the Torah, and He used it to create the world. So that means that when we learn the Torah, we're not learning about something that happened in the past. And that's what the Zohar is trying to say. Everything that takes place in your life is a revelation, and it's an expression of everything that goes on in the Torah. The reason why we have to read it every week forever is because these events are constantly taking place. Now obviously we don't have Bilam, we don't have Moshe, we don't have the Jews in Mitzrayim, but we do. And the fact that we don't know that is why we don't connect to the Torah. But if you realize that everything that takes place in the Torah is happening at every moment, because if Hashem used it to create the physical world, it existed before the physical world, so what makes a physical world a physical world? So try to stay with me a little bit, it's a little bit deep. Time and space, right? You have in the world time and you have space. But if the Torah was created before the world, so it's before there was time and space, so just like Hashem who always is, so too the Torah always is. It's always happening. Everything that we learn about every single week is constantly happening to us. And it's the teachings of Chassidut and Kabbalah that bring out the inner essence of what's taking place for us personally in our life. And this is the key we're going to learn tonight to freedom. Freedom from everything that we're looking for. From our anxiety and our sadness and our loneliness and our despair and our frustrations. All the answers are in the Torah. Because all of those frustrations, they're also found in the Torah. We just don't know it's talking about us. So part of tonight we're going to find out how. To give a mashal, when you go to a movie theater, you ever been to the movies? Okay, where is the movie coming out of? The film projector. But let's say you didn't know that. Where would you think the movie was coming out of? The screen. Okay. So when you experience your life, like let's say today's a Sunday, so you spend time with your family, which means you probably had some nice moments and you probably have some fighting, all right? So that's what seems to be going on. And it seems to be happening every Sunday, okay? But the truth is what you're looking at is a blank screen. So what are you seeing then? What you're seeing is the film being projected onto the blank screen, which is your world, which is your life. But you're not really seeing the essence of what's taking place. You're just seeing a projection of what's taking place. This whole world is like that. It's just a blank screen, and what you see is a projection. What's the film? It's the Torah. So if a person really knows the Torah, then he knows what's really going on. And he doesn't need to try to understand the projections of his life, and he doesn't get caught up in them either. And this is one of the most beautiful, most powerful aspects of the Torah, is to see things clearly. Not to be stuck in the external, not to be caught up in these things that are taking place in our life that maybe aren't even real. Okay? So, Rav Nachman says that leaving Mitzrayim didn't happen then. It happens every day of history. That every single day we're leaving Mitzrayim. And not only that, he says every moment you're leaving Egypt. Every moment. So we're going to have to understand what is Egypt, what is Mitzrayim, what is the slavery, what is it? Is it just that we were physical slaves and that we had to work? Or is there something more going on here? Because it seems like the whole Torah is revolving, according to the Ramban, the whole Torah is revolving around this one episode of us in Egypt. So we have to understand what this is. Adding to it, we have a mitzvah that every day we need to remember certain things. We need to say certain things that happened to us in the past. One of those things is that we left Egypt. You need to remember every day that you left Egypt. Why? It happened thousands of years ago. It's over, right? Imagine when you were like 6 years old, right? You got a trophy for something. Okay, kol hakavod, but it's over, you know? How many times am I going to remember, you know, that I won my gymnastics contest? Or that I stole that kid's birthday cake and I blew out his candle and I pretended it was my own birthday. I heard something like this happened to me when I was a kid. How much can you remember this, right? It's an event. Obviously, if the Torah is telling you must do this, there's something you're supposed to be feeling from this, something you're supposed to be connecting from this. Yeah, my son did the same thing recently, so I had like a flashback. Okay. So, like father, like son, right? They say that the actions of the fathers is a portent for the son, so I guess it's a real thing. Okay, so the answer is to remind you that you're no longer a slave. You're not a slave anymore. What do you mean? I know I'm free. I live in America. This is the land of the free. I can do anything I want, whenever I want. If I want to eat food, I go get food, right? If I want a steak, I'll get a steak. If I want sushi, I'll go get sushi. If I want to go learn Torah, I'm going to go learn Torah. If I want to go find a boyfriend, I'll just go on a website and look at the best prospects, right? Whatever it is, you know, I can do anything I want, whenever I want. I'm so not a slave. And this is why the Torah is telling you, don't forget that you left Mitzrayim. Because we also thought we were free there. Until we weren't. Okay? Meaning, we are slaves. And that's why the Torah is teaching you to remember that you're not anymore. Because we really are enslaved. What are we enslaved to? We're enslaved to our low self-esteem. We're enslaved to our desires for food, for pleasure, for companionship. We're enslaved to our anger. We're enslaved to our jealousies. We're enslaved to our laziness. We're enslaved to our low motivations. We're enslaved to our jobs. We're enslaved to the internet. We're enslaved to Amazon Prime. We're enslaved to Netflix and chill. You know? We are slaves. That's the whole point. The Torah is trying to teach us. And this is the greatest thing. That at least in the past when people were enslaved, they knew we were enslaved. How great is it at the end, right before Mashiach comes, that Mashiach has to teach us something we don't know, that we're all slaves. And we think we're free. That's the greatest slavery, right? Rav Nachman says there's something called that Hester Panim, that Hashem is hiding himself from you. Now the first level of this is you know he's hiding from you. You feel distant from him. And someone who's spiritually sensitive is going to feel at times that Hashem is hiding from him or her, right? But Rav Nachman says in the end, in the last generation, it's going to be Hastara behastara. Right? There's a famous song by Yosef Karduner based on this Torah. Yeah, it's actually based on this line from Rav Nachman's Torah, which he says that in the end, the last generation, we're going to be in a concealment within a concealment. Meaning, it's going to be so hidden that we don't even know that Hashem is hidden from us. We don't even know that we're far from something great. We think that we have it. That's the greatest concealment. And yet we're enslaved. So what is Egypt? The answer is, Egypt is an exile of yourself. Okay? The word for Mitzrayim, which they translate as Shemot, doesn't mean Egypt. What is Meitzarim? A Meitzar is a constriction. Right? Let's say you go to the gym, right? And you work out. So when you work out, what's happening is your muscles are contracting and then the fibers are ripping, and then when they grow back stronger. That's how Hashem made you, okay? But what happens to the muscles, even though it's really supposed to be this big, it all squeezes into one place. So that's called Mitzrayim. That's what happened to us there. That we were squeezed. That's what Meitzar means. A Meitzarim is to have a constriction, or like imagine you have an awl around your neck, and it's tightening, okay? That's what Mitzrayim is. And that was what was happening to our souls. That our souls went into hiding. Our souls went into exile. And that was the exile Mitzrayim. Now why is it called Shamot? Why is this inner slavery, the loss of self, have anything to do with names? Right? It should be called Exodus, or it should be called exile. But what does names have to do with anything? Okay. So in Lashon HaKodesh, the Torah is very different than any other language. Every other language, let's say for instance, this is called coffee, right? I'm drinking coffee. So, well, let's say this is a cup. Now, why is it called a cup? Because we agree that that's what it's called. The word cup has nothing to do with this. I could say this is a shmup, right? And if we all agree tonight that from now on cups are shmups, then they'll be shmups. Because it doesn't make a difference. We just named it that. But Lashon HaKodesh is not a conventional name. It is the essence of the thing. We are calling a thing by its essence because Hashem used the Torah to create the world. So He used that language to create everything. So a kos is really what this thing is. It is a kos. So we can't change the name kos because that's its essence. We need to find out what is a kos. Why is it called a kos? In fact, the gematria of kos is 86, which is that of Elohim, which is judgment, Hashem's judgment. Right? Part of the reason why we put wine into the cup is because the wine represents Hashem's chesed, or da'at, and we're putting into a cup which represents Elohim. There's a lot of stuff going on. But anyway, love, just basically, the name is the essence. Right? They say one of the only times that a person is guaranteed Ruach HaKodesh is when he names his child, a Jewish name. That name is really what Hashem wants to name that person, because He has a certain mission for this person in his life, and He places it in the minds of the parents to give the kid that name. Sometimes you'll see like a kid come out, and the parents will change. Doesn't look like that. That's not what's happening. Hashem is saying the name you guys like is not Him. That's not His essence. That's not what He came here for. So He's not Abraham. He's Joseph. Right? Like I'll give you an example. Interestingly, my parents thought it was going to be a girl. They weren't far off. They were going to name me Rachel. Now, interestingly, spiritually, David and Rachel represent the same spiritual quality of Malchut, of Emunah, of Tefillah. So really, it's almost like no matter what they name me, whether I was a girl or I was a boy, I'm still this quality of David Rachel. It doesn't change. Like they couldn't change that about me, so to speak. Even though my parents are completely secular, and my dad's name is Andy, and my mom's name is Sherry, for some reason my name had to be David, and my brother's name had to be Jacob. You know, so it's a Ruach HaKodesh that Hashem is placing it within the parents. So the name is the essence of the person. So we see that the whole parsha, the whole book starts out that these 70 names went down into Egypt. Now we know from the Arizal that these 70 souls are the original Jewish souls, meaning that every Jewish soul that would ever be born after that is a spark or a branch of those root souls. Meaning, like, let's say for instance, there's one of them is called Yehuda. It could be that all of us sitting in this room are sparks of that one root soul. And in fact, Rav Nachman teaches that when you learn from a certain person and you enjoy learning from that person, the reason is not because necessarily his Torah is more enlightening than somebody else's, or that he's more charismatic or better looking. It's actually because you guys share a same root of your soul. And therefore, you need that teacher for your tikkun. And he needs you for his tikkun. Right? That's why sometimes you're feeling a certain teacher and the other person's like, wow, I can't listen to this. And they're listening to this guy like, this is the best. And you're like, I can't hear this for 1 second. And the answer is, it's nothing to do with the quality of the person. It has to do with this person's not going to help you complete your mission in your life. And Hashem placed a mechanism within each of us that we're always on track. So you find your person, you find the thing that you connect to. And obviously the easiest example is your husband and your wife. right? They're actually, Rav Nachman says, another part of your own soul. So, for sure, that's the case there. But we see that these 70 souls, they went down to Egypt, but it says their names went down to Egypt, meaning their essence went down to Egypt, meaning they forgot who they were. What does it say in the Midrash that the Jews did as soon as they got to Mitzrayim? They planned on going straight back up to Israel, where they were from. But what happened? They're like, wow, Mitzrayim is pretty nice. They have a lot of food here, they have a lot of drinks here, they have a lot of money here. Maybe in the meantime, while we're here, we're going to be here, why don't we just build homes? Sounds familiar? So build homes, right? Get a nice car. They had those back then. Get a nice donkey, set up shop. And they built up lives there, right? And they started working for Para, for the government. And soon that turned into slavery. Why? Because that's not our home. We are not Egyptians. We're from Israel. We're Jews. And we were never meant to go anywhere permanently. So what happens whenever we go somewhere that's not really who we are? We become enslaved. It even says in the Torah that they started to get haircuts like the Egyptians, which they described as like haircuts that you see Bukharians in this city have now. That they cut the sides of the hair off and they keep it really long on top.
Oh my gosh.
So that's exactly what we did when we were in Mitzrayim. That was like an Egyptian haircut.
Mohawk.
Yeah, but kind of like a mohawk, whatever it is.
A man bun?
Man bun,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But you see, it's like it's a very thin line between going to visit a place and becoming absorbed in a place. One of the most unbelievable parts of the Jewish people, and unfortunately so, is that we're like chameleons. We can go anywhere and literally be more like them than the host nation. We could become more secular than the secular American. We could become more communist than the communist Russian. We can go anywhere and we can become more so. Why? Because our souls are greater, so our ability to go into exile is deeper, which is a very scary thing. So what happens when these 70 root souls went to Egypt? They lost themselves. And this is actually hinted at, like we just said, by the name Mitzrayim. It really is a code word for a constriction of mochin. So this is a very common term in Chassidut and Kabbalah. Mochin means consciousness. It's a very in word now, especially with the Kabbalah Center and all these things. Consciousness. What is consciousness? It's your ability to perceive reality, right? Our ability to perceive reality, when we went to Mitzrayim, it went into exile. We could not perceive reality anymore. That's what Mitzrayim means. And interestingly, even though it could be that we actually physically went up to Mitzrayim, whenever it says that the Jews go to Mitzrayim, it always says we go down. Why? Because it's a spiritual descent. No matter where you're coming from, you're always going down if you go to Mitzrayim. Because your consciousness is going into exile. That's always called a descent. Okay? If I'm losing you for a second, just let me know, because I'm like building certain concepts and they're very deep. It's like a deep class, so I'm trying to make it simple, but still not losing the taste of what I'm trying to get over. The Baal Shem Tov explains that we have two souls. This is one of the big chidushim of the Baal Shem Tov, that you don't have one soul. You have two souls. You have a nefesh elokit, and you have a nefesh b'amit. You have a godly soul, you have a divine soul, which the Baal Tanya says is chelek of Eloka mamish. It's literally a piece of God. That the only difference between Hashem and that piece is contained within you. But if you were to, let's say, take all of the pieces and just like remove our bodies, we would just be a part of God. That part is called our divine soul. Okay? Then you have another soul, which is a much louder soul, which is a much noisier soul, which is your nefesh b'amit, which is our animal soul. That animal soul is the source for all of our desires, right? For food, for pleasure, for anything, right? All of our desires. It's the root of all of our midot, good and bad, right? Your ability to be happy, your ability to be light and to be able to joke around, but also the opposite. Your trigger for anger and your lack of patience, all of those things come from your animal soul. Okay? Now, what are these two souls? What is a soul? A soul is consciousness. Okay? A soul is the way that you perceive reality. Now, the Baal Shem Tov teaches that you're always connected to one of these two souls. So to speak, you can't be connected to both at the same time. Either your nefesh be'amit, your animal soul, is how you're perceiving life, or your godly soul is how you're perceiving life. The issue is that the secular world teaches you only to think with your animal soul, because they don't know they have a divine soul. So as a result of that, everything in fashion, and everything in society, and everything in media is gearing you and supporting and encouraging your strengthening and investing in your animal soul, when the Torah teaches that all of that is the key to exile and being thrown down into Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim really is when your animal soul is what is pronounced and what's being expressed, and your godly soul goes into exile, and you're not in contact with it anymore. That is what Mitzrayim is. And we actually learn that when Yaakov goes up, Esav goes down. And when Esav goes up, Yaakov goes down. Yaakov and Esav are not just twins. They represent your godly soul and your animal soul. Right? You notice that Yaakov is always sitting in tents. He's getting to know himself more. He wants to know about reality. He's connected to spiritual. He's very quiet, just like your godly soul. And Esav, he's very loud, and he's hunting, and he's eating food, and he's with women. He's doing all these things. Why? Because he represents the animal soul. And we know that whenever Esav is up, or the nation of Edom is up, the Jewish people are down. But when the Jewish people are up, because we represent the godly soul in the world, so the animal soul goes down. The second case, when the animal soul goes up and the godly soul goes down, this is called exile. This is called Galut. And the greatest exile that ever happened was Mitzrayim. So I'll just tell you interestingly, you have 4 letters of Hashem's name, Yud, Kei, Vav, Kei. They all represent something different, positive. And also we know that the negative character traits that we each have are stemming from those 4 letters as well. So for instance, a person deals with sadness, or despair, or depression, or laziness, or lack of energy. That all comes from the last letter of Hashem's name. The Vav in Hashem's name deals with all of our passions. A desire for food, a desire for pleasure, sexual desire, all of these things, they all come from the Vav of Hashem's name. Then you have the Hey above that, which all has to do with speech. Our desire to speak Lashon Hara, our desire to speak even when it's not necessary, our desire to fill up space so it's not awkward, right? Our over-speaking, our under-speaking, everything has to do with speech, has to do with that upper head. And then finally you have the Yud, which is the highest letter of Hashem's name, which has to do with qualities that are human in nature. Jealousy and anger and kavod, right? Honor, desire for honor, all those things come from the Yud. So we learned that there's 4 exiles in history. Why are there 4 exiles in history? Because they are to uproot these 4 negative character traits. The 4 ones I just listed. Yes?
Did you see they're all good?
Right. So they're good when you uproot them.
Okay.
Yeah. The letters of Hashem's name are good. Hashem made it in such a way that we have free will. What does He want us to do with the free will? Something called birur. He wants to mix good and bad, so to speak, so that you'll choose the good. And by choosing the good, you're going to uplift it and take it out from the bad. And the bad eventually will become transformed and also good. Okay? But why do we have to go through the exile of Greece, of Persia, of Rome, of Bavel? Because they each correspond to a different letter of Hashem's name. But Mitzrayim is different because Mitzrayim corresponds to the tip of the Yud. I mean, like as soon as you put your pen down, that's Mitzrayim. That's the tip of Hashem's name. What's the issue with that? That within that tip is included and eventually expressed all 4 letters, right? When you go to write down anything, as soon as the drop goes down, in that drop is contained all the letters of the name. Does that make sense to everybody?
No, can you say that again?
Okay. You go to write your name down. What's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah. So really, in order to start writing the name Sarah, you have to first put your pen down.
Okay.
So included in that dot is, so to speak, what's going to eventually become all the letters of your name.
Potential.
Potentially, right. So Mitzrayim is the dot of Hashem's name. So in Mitzrayim was contained the suffering and the pain of all 4 exiles. That's why Egypt was so bad. That's why the whole Torah is talking about Egypt. And in reality, Chazal, the rabbis teach that every single exile that we go through, whether it's collective or personal, it's called Mitzrayim. Right? The exile of Greece with Hanukkah that we just had, it's called Mitzrayim. The exile of Purim that's going to come up, called Mitzrayim. They're all called Mitzrayim because in each of these places, we are losing ourselves. Whether it's to anger or to jealousy or desire for food or desire for money, whatever it is, we're losing ourselves. That is the exile. And what's the litmus test? Like, let's say you came out of this class and you say, how do I know if I'm in exile? Right? How do I know if I'm in Mitzrayim? The answer is, have you felt angry lately?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you felt sad lately? Have you felt, I feel like I'm in an AA meeting. Hi, my name is Dave. Have you felt confused lately?
Yeah.
Have you felt the lack of fulfillment lately? Have you felt bored lately?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I was so bored.
I was
Wow.
so bored. I literally was in my kitchen for like 2 hours.
Okay, good. Have you felt any jealousy recently?
No.
Okay, good. Chas v'shalom. Women never feel that. Okay. Have you ever felt, let's say,
Basically, we all got it.
yeah, we got it. Okay, good. So, or like desires, okay?
Yeah.
You're desiring money, you're desiring luxury, you're desiring comfort, you're desiring food, you're desiring, okay. So if you're feeling any or probably all of those things, it means you are in Mitzrayim. Wow, don't get, I see you jumping up from your street.
Let's say a person had a different way of living,
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden, this desire struck hit this individual
yeah,
out of nowhere, just came.
right,
What causes that to happen to the person?
right, a good question.
How does the nefesh,
The meat,
yeah,
the
just
animal
all
soul?
of a sudden, revive,
Yeah.
come up to that?
Yeah, so we'll talk about this. There is a concept that when you're trying to grow spiritually, Hashem never gives you more than what you can handle. However, there are, and we all know this, skeletons in our closets that we have never really dealt with, that we have kind of just placed there and hope that like when I get married and I have kids, like all my holes will be filled. And then you realize that they're not, and then you have to deal with it, and then now you have a wife and or a husband, and then you have kids, and it's even worse now. Okay, but but whatever it is, we all have this. Now, Hashem is not going to let us have to deal with all that in one shot. So what He does is wherever you're holding, that's what He'll give you to deal with. And when you start to grow, He's going to give you more of, let's say, the unfinished business. Part of when you get married, one of the benefits, which people usually get divorced from, which is a real shame because really it's the biggest benefit of the marriage, is they bring out all of your lackings. We resist this and we reject this because we think our husband or wife is supposed to make us feel whole, which the Torah says is completely ludicrous. Nobody makes you feel whole except for Hashem. So we expect our wife or our husband to, and they don't, and then we can't take it, right? And problems happen. But the truth is, they're supposed to be bringing out what's lacking so that you are forced to work on it. Your kids do the same thing. Whatever your kids are struggling with, it's a reflection of you. So, yeah.
So that struggle is coming from the spouse or the children?
It's being brought out by them, but it's something you always had to go through.
Let's say a spouse, a man and a woman get married, and the girl didn't have a desire for
A certain thing.
certain things,
And now you have them.
and now the girl is suffering with this desire, and she doesn't know how to
Deal with it.
deal with that desire.
Right.
And the guy's suffering with certain things that he thought, oh my God, I thought I went through all of this already.
Right.
Why am I going through this again?
Okay, so it's a little deep, but just on a very simple level, every level of your soul has 10 parts. Okay? When you, so to speak, it's like a video game almost. When you, let's say, have perfected your place, you go up to the next level. And when you get to the next level, you go through all 10 levels again, but at a more intensified place. So therefore, you're always going to have to revisit these things again. And it's not a bad thing. It's actually, so you can see, did I do tshuva, right? People think tshuva means, I'm sorry I did this, I'm sorry. That's not what tshuva is. Rambam says very clearly, tshuva is, you're in the same exact place as the time that you erred, and you don't this time. So how do you get that opportunity? You must be put in this, not just the same place, you must have the same intensity of inner
desire to change it.
Right, at that
you
moment.
can make it or break it, and then all your hard work that you strive
You
to
can't,
do,
no, it can't be like that. The Kedusha only goes up. So whatever it looks like is not what it is. This is part of Mitzrayim. You're never going down. You're always going up. It's like a spiral. So like imagine like I'm going like this, right? So even when I go down, my down is higher than my up. See? This is how we go up in spiritually. It's not like this, even though it feels like this. It's really like this. So your down is above where you were before. This is part of what Rav Nachman teaches, and why his students always used to come up to him and he used to yell at them when they complained about how they were struggling with this and that, and he was telling them that you're doing amazing, you're doing great, that's why you're struggling. Right, so this is a very important lesson. We're going to speak more about this as time goes on.
You said about the children, they bring out whatever the parents.
They bring out our lackings, yeah, sure.
But is it something that the parents went through also?
It's not necessarily something that you went through, but it's bringing out a quality in you that's not yet rectified. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be exactly how you went through it, but it's going to bring out that part of you that's still, let's say, raw, or it has not been made whole. It's really good for you, but because we resist, so then it doesn't feel good. So what brings you to this place in Mitzrayim? Like, how did we get here? If we all agree that we're there, right, based on whatever we just discussed, how did we get there? So the answer is, initially, we chose things. We chose it initially because we focused on our external life. Okay? We chose external life. Let's say even as a kid, right? You want to be one of the cool kids. You want to hang out with the cool kids. So what did you do? You sacrificed who you were at your age so that you can fit in. That's called exile. And even that in the beginning placed you in Mitzrayim. The issue is that Paro, who we're going to speak about now, was not just a person who existed then. Paro is in each and every one of our lives, and he's the one who keeps us in Mitzrayim. Right? We choose to go there, not on purpose, but we choose to go there because we connect, whether it's our desire for physical comforts or for luxury, whatever the media teaches us is good, right? Whatever we grew up with is like our guilty pleasure, you know, and then we invest in that thing, that causes us to descend into Mitzrayim. But once we're there, Paro keeps us there. Paro is a code word for your Yetzer Hara. The whole story of the Jews in Egypt represents you. You're the Jew. You're Klal Yisrael. You're struggling with these things. And Paro is your Yetzer Hara. And how does he keep the Jews in Mitzrayim? You'll notice something interesting. He just constantly makes them work more. Right? Moshe comes and says, it's time for the Jews to leave. And he says, go back to your work and increase the work. Instead of having them build and we give them the supplies, now they're going to have to get the supplies on their own. This is all talking about your inner life. That every time that you're close to, let's say, breaking free from your difficulties, your inner challenges, Paro says increase the work. So what does that work increase look like for us? It could mamash be your work. That Paro is getting you to work more hours, to be more invested in your work life instead of in your family life. He can get you to watch movies and YouTube clips all the time. He can get you to spend all of your time on Facebook and on Instagram and on Snapchat. I don't even know if these things are real anymore. They were a few years ago, so whatever is the thing now, that, Netflix, you know, all of these things. What is the way of Paro? The word Paro actually comes from the root, which means to divert. His whole trick is to divert your attention, not to allow you to pay attention. So you look at our generation now, and we see the whole craze of technology and all these things, and we think it's just because technology grew and expanded and developed, and this is the situation we have to. It's not that. It's because this is the 6th day of history, when the Nachash came up to Adam and Chava, and this is the most intense revelation of negativity that ever was. And as a result of that, the Nachash, or Paro, his whole thing is to not let you pay attention. So we created technology to get us to stop paying attention, not to focus. Right? How hard is it for us to focus? And this is Paro's whole thing, not to let you think. You're not able to think. You ever notice that even when you have time, let's say you're free, you feel anxious just because you feel like I should be doing something right now. I don't feel comfortable sitting and thinking. Why is that? It's Paro, it's your Yetzer Hara. He does not want you for one moment to sit and contemplate, because what we're going to learn is that's the beginning of you leaving Egypt. Yeah.
So how specifically though is the Nachash and Paro more relevant today to our generation with technology?
Because it's so easy to be diverted, right? Like back then they didn't have all of these technologies and stimuluses, right? So there was not something, I mean, they were potato farmers. How much are you going to be distracted by, right? Maybe the work could increase or intensify, but it's not like now, the mamash, you can't pay attention for 1 second, that you go into a family's home and nobody's speaking to each other and everybody's on their phone, right? And then everybody's wondering, why do I feel sad? Why do I feel confused? Why is my relationship with my husband not good? And the answer is because nobody's there.
Is it now that we're in a deeper state of exile? Is
Yes,
that
we're
what it is?
we're in the deepest state of exile. We're in the deepest state of exile. Yeah.
So the jealousy of the brothers that sent Yosef down to Egypt, once he's there, it seems like we kind of glorify his whole journey there, and how he became the Viceroy, and then he was Paro's right hand.
So this is what we're going to speak about, that in reality, it's a good thing we go down to Egypt. Because we're all Yosef. You'll notice, how many times was Yosef sold?
Twice.
4 times. Why? Because we go into exile 4 times. Everything that happened to Yosef as a person, we go through collectively as a group of people.
How was he sold?
How is he sold 4 times?
Yeah, what are the 4 times?
The Ishmaelim, the Midianites.
He was brought to jail, no?
Yeah, but that was different. Before he even got to Egypt, he was sold 4 times. It's even in the acronym for the name of the coat that he was given. I think it's called Pasim. Yeah. So that word Pasim is actually an acronym for the 4 nations that sold him.
Okay.
And they're each reflecting a different exile that we collectively have to go through.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So there's something good that happens here. Hashem doesn't allow things to happen to us that's not good for us, and we're going to get to that. I'm just trying to explain first and try to set up what is Mitzrayim for us. Why are we connecting to Shemot? What is this? Okay. So how does he keep you enslaved? The answer is work. Work. And it doesn't mean just physical work. And obviously you see that that's a lot of the case. I mean, it's amazing. Like I came out of school and we went to school. We went to like the best colleges and the best programs and we got degrees and all these things. And what happens as soon as you get a job, you're working 14, 16 hours a day, right? Slaving away for years. And then maybe you get a promotion. But with the promotion comes extra work. And you get stuck because why? I went to school for 4 years. I went to school for 6 years. I went to school for 8 years. Like I met a doctor over here. You think he's got to be so happy. He's making tons of money, right? He has no time for anything. And he says, I only realize now the truth, but what am I going to do? I went to school for 12 years. So that's called Egypt. It's called you're stuck in Egypt. It's funny, but it's not. You know, it's
My husband's in his first year of medical school.
No, I'm not saying it's a good profession. It is what it is. You can be a doctor and still make your own hours and you get to it. But I'm just saying that in everything in life, you can be in exile in that place or you can make it that you're free in that place. And this is what we're going to speak about, okay? So the answer is, how do you begin to leave? Right? How do you go? So what's really interesting is Hashem's rachamim, his compassion, is that what Hashem does is either we choose to leave ourselves, or he made, like when you get like a video game, there's like a, what's it called?
Oh,
Like a glitch in the game. There's a glitch in Paro, because that through Paro's causing us to suffer individually, emotionally, psychologically, he causes you to suffer to such an extent, and it reaches such a tipping point that you have to change. Meaning you have to overcome him. So either, let's say we choose it because we have the zchut and Hashem allows us to some truth to open up into our life, and we get to a Torah class and we hear these things and we change prior to that, or the suffering of Paro becomes so unbearable, right? Our low self-esteem and our psychological issues and our emotional issues become so intense, we have no choice but to work on it because we can't survive any longer like that. So that's his glitch. Ultimately, we have to go free. And you see what happened to the Jewish people. They suffered so much from Paro that they all just started crying out. And Hashem says, I heard their tears, I heard their cry, right? They don't know me, that's the whole point. Their exile is, they don't know Hashem. Rav Nachman says, the exile was, none of them spoke to Hashem. So us all doing Hibodedut is like the beginning of the redemption. It's the only thing they couldn't do in Mitzrayim was nobody could talk to Hashem. That was the exile. That they know God exists, but do I really think Hashem is listening to me? I don't know. Is Hashem really going to answer that prayer? That was Mitzrayim. And Paro punished them so much, he caused them so much suffering, that they just started crying. They just couldn't take it. They were all crying. And as a result, what happens? Hashem sends Moshe. So now we have to understand who's Moshe. If Paro is our Yetzer Hara, and Egypt is, so to speak, ourselves going into exile, so who's Moshe? Moshe is Mashiach. But we do not just have one person who's going to save us. That's true. Who's Moshe, right? You have a Mashiach within you. You have a spark of Mashiach inside of you. And in fact, Mashiach only comes when that spark of each of us saves ourselves. Right? There was a Jewish secular philosopher, he said it's interesting that Judaism, which created the concept of Mashiach, and other people took the concept of the Messiah, but we're the only religion that says that the Messiah only comes once we all only save ourselves. Meaning, Mashiach comes when we do tshuva. So if we all do tshuva, so what's Mashiach coming for? We saved ourselves. So it's just interesting that Hashem only brings the collective redeemer when we all individually redeem ourselves. So that's Moshe. So what is Moshe? So it's in his name again. It says when the daughter of Paro took him out of the water, it says his name is Moshe because they drew him from water. So you guys should know, based on the Zohar, based on even the Gemara and Chazal and Midrashim, whenever the Torah speaks about water, it's speaking about God consciousness. It's speaking about divine consciousness. It's speaking about Torah itself, water. So when Moshe is drawn from the water, it means his essence is rooted in truth. I drew him from the water. He's from the place of truth. And what's Mitzrayim? It's Alma Deshikra, it's the world of lies. So why is Moshe the Redeemer? Because he's only truth. That's why it said when Moshe was born, he's good. Because the Torah says clearly that there is no good beside Torah, because the Torah is truth. There's no good besides truth. And it said when Moshe was born, Ki Tov, he's good. Why? Because he's the truth. That's why he redeems us. Because we're stuck in a lie. A lie of, my life is going to be good when I have this. My life is going to be great when I have this. My relationship is going to be good when he treats me like this. Right? My relationship with myself is going to be good when I feel like this. All of these are based on lies. Lies that we were taught as kids, lies that we were taught by society, by the media, all based on a lie. How do you know something's a lie? This is just a good litmus test. If you feel sad from it. Now, I know this goes contrary to whatever we learned as kids, that the truth hurts. According to the Torah, this is nonsense. If it's true, it will make you feel good. Doesn't mean that everything that makes you feel as good is true. But for sure, if it's making you feel sad, it's a lie. I'm this isn't gonna work. It's a lie. Right? I'm never gonna get it right. It's a lie. Right? So if you feel yourself feeling sad, it means that you're thinking about a lie. Rav Nachman says the whole difference between your godly soul and your animal soul is the difference between happiness and sadness. Your animal soul's goal is to make you feel sad. And your godly soul's goal is to make you feel happy. To feel happy. Moshe frees us from the suffering that Paro puts us through. Why? Because Moshe is drawn from the water.
Does it say anywhere why God created like the Yezerah?
Yes.
Why?
So it says in the Zohar, a mashal, it gives a story. There was a king who had a son, and he wanted his son to be king, but he wanted to prepare him. So he knew that his greatest test is going to be, because he's going to be the king and he's handsome, there's going to be many women looking for him. So he's going to have to be faithful to his wife and have a good relationship and to reign as king. So what did he do to make sure he was ready? He hired a prostitute. And she seduced him. And really, even though she's seducing him with every single method that she can, she actually wants him to pass because she's hired by the king. So this prostitute is our Yetzer Hara. And even though our Yetzer Hara is trying as hard as possible to make us fall, in the end, he really wants us to succeed. Because in truth, he also is just the messenger of Hashem.
And what about the Satan?
Same. Satan is the same. This is the difference between us and Christianity. Christianity believes Satan has an existence of its own. It makes its own choices, and they're not directed by Hashem. And therefore, there's good in the world, which is God, and there's bad, which is Satan. And that makes things easy to understand why bad things happen. It's Satan. Good things happen. It's Hashem. But for us, we have to deal with the fact that whether it's good or it's bad, it's still good, and it's all from Hashem. And only a Jew can chop this. And even this is difficult to comprehend. This is something that takes a lifetime to try to grapple with. This class might even be a two-part class because there's a lot here. If you guys don't mind, there's like a lot to talk about with this. It's a really amazing topic. Yeah, it's a lot. I tried to get everything in, but I'm thinking I'm going to split this into two classes. It's okay? You with me? Everybody's with me a little bit?
I
Ish?
think big picture we're with you, but not necessarily.
Yeah, we didn't get to the small stuff.
No, but even with all the details that you're throwing in there, I would say that we're probably not catching all of that.
I got it.
Big picture,
Big
hopefully.
picture, you got it.
Hopefully.
Okay.
You said that again, the lie is false.
You're gonna know something's not true if it causes you to be sad. If you're thinking about something and your emotion that results from it is sadness, it means 100% you're thinking about a lie.
So like everything that's going on in the news is all lies.
Yes, exactly.
What
Love
is
it.
anti-Semitism situation?
So why is it
So that's
making
a
you
lie?
feel sad?
Is it all a lie?
No, wait 1 second.
Huh?
Why is it making you feel sad?
People are getting hurt.
Yeah, but our
Because
people.
we're not
Wait,
doing
wait,
safe
wait,
women,
wait, let's go with the
so
person
they're
who
not-
else.
Scared.
Scared. What are you scared about?
to get hit.
War?
Where does
To get hit. I literally think there's gonna be like a knife in my
Okay,
back.
so I want to tell you something. That fear is based on a lie.
What do you mean?
1 second, I'm gonna tell you.
Let's get into this.
Yeah, let's get into it. Okay, good. So the Baal Shem Tov, when he was a little kid, he was an orphan. He was orphaned as a little child, and his parents passed away. And his father, right before he died, in like those epic movie scenes, he says, "I want to tell you something." And he told him this one line, and he told him, "Live with this your whole life. Just only this, and don't worry about anything. I'm telling you, after being through my whole life, this is all you need to know." And the Baal Shem Tov made all of Chassidut based on this one line. He told him, "Fear Hashem and love every Jew with everything you got. Don't worry about anything else." So so it sounds pretty simple. I mean, you can get that from any Torah book. So what's so deep about that? He's saying that there is no other fear beside a fear of Hashem. So if you're fearing something that's not Hashem, which is going to be 99.9% of the time, it's because it's rooted in a lie. Nobody's capable of doing anything to you unless Hashem wants it to happen. Okay? So therefore, if you're concerned someone is going to hurt you, so then what you're concerned is Hashem is going to hurt you.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Okay.
I'm kind of afraid of than Hashem. I don't
No,
know.
I'm trying to explain that there's nothing to be scared of because Hashem only does good to you,
Even if it's bad.
even if it seems bad.
Even if someone were to hurt you, it's a good thing
Yes.
because God sent it to you.
Yeah,
I
I'm just saying like.
Yeah.
Why did Hashem fall? Or you should say thank you, Hashem. So you fell. I was like, Hashem, I don't know why you fell, but thank you so much.
It's good. I do this all the time now. I mean, we don't always know the reason why it's happening. Okay.
It's like this.
But again, for as soon I'm telling you this because I'm a person. I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, so
Oh.
I know what it's like to fear. I'm telling you very clearly, and all of the Hasidic masters say, if a fear wells up in you and anxiety comes over you, and that fear is not the fear of Hashem, which I'm sure for all of us that's not what we're worried about, it's 100% a lie, and you should scream out, sheker, it's a lie. There's nothing to be scared of. Everything is from Hashem, and everything Hashem does is for the best. So if you feel a fear, it's because your emunah in Hashem is lacking. You're not fearing the event, you're fearing the fact that your emunah is at a deficit. That's from exile. But if you were not in exile, which we're going to speak about, you would never fear anything besides Hashem, and that fear is not like fear of events or people or places. It's a good thing. The Torah actually teaches that when you have fear of Hashem, it causes you to be very happy. The Zohar says that only wherever you find Yir at Hashem, there you find Shalom. There you find peace. That's the reason why the word Jerusalem comes from Yerushalayim. It actually comes from two words, Yira Shalem, or Yira Shalom, complete Yira. The whole concept of Yira, Yerushalayim, is the place of peace. Why? Because there Yira is whole. Yira, which usually means fear, really means Emunah. So in a place of complete Emunah, there's peace. That's Yerushalayim. So when you're scared or you're fear of anti-Semitism, that's only because you lack Emunah, which is fine. You're not alone in the boat. We're all in the boat with you. But that's the reason. It's not because you're scared of those people. Those people have no ability to do anything to you. Nobody does. Just think about it.
No, I know. I used to be very strong on it. Like I used to walk down the street. It was very, very late at night. I saw like this black guy with me and him by myself. I'm like, Hashem, you can't do anything unless you want it. And I was very young, and I just still went by him. I had that strength of like Emunah. I'm like, I don't know what happened to it. Like now I'm just like,
So
God forbid.
what happened to it, and you're like everybody else, is Hashem gives it to every Jew as a gift for free in the beginning. And then he takes it away. We're going to speak about this as well.
Dating and marriage.
Yeah, it's like dating and marriage. Same as that concept. That you go through, so to speak, a infatuation period. And then that leaves, and then you wonder where the person was that you liked. And it's nothing to do with this is the way Hashem made it. First 6 months, you get a free gift. Same thing with Emunah. You get Emunah in the beginning for free. Then challenges come your way. Your Emunah is completely derailed. You don't know what happened to you. And you need to build up and start all over again. It's the whole concept of us leaving Egypt. That was a free gift. We went through the desert for 49 days. That's where you're at right now. That's where all of us are at right now. And we need to build our Emunah here. And when our Emunah is whole on the 50th day, we get the Torah, we get Mashiach, we get the Meitim, redemption. This is the Torah. This is what we're learning about. So fear. There's fear. And then sadness. Same thing. Let's say whatever's making you sad, I promise you that whatever's making you sad is a lie.
Let's say your bad character traits are
Yes.
making you sad. How is that a lie?
Why should your bad character traits make you sad?
Let's say because I'm failing at something constantly.
You're not failing. You're not failing. Your Yetzer Hara is overpowering you because Hashem is not helping you.
So what do you do for Hashem to help you?
You need to ask Him for help.
Talk to him?
Yes. But it's not because you're doing something wrong. You didn't do anything. There's nothing wrong with you. That part of you is from your animal soul. That's not who you really are. You're your godly soul. This is one of the very important things that we all have to connect to. Your lackings are not you.
So you should increase the godliness part
Yes.
and lower the animal soul.
That's the goal.
So how do you do that? Through his
He can only
bodhisattva?
do
Yeah,
that.
through Bodhisattva.
And through Torah and mitzvot?
Right, that's what I wanted to bring about. Part of what happens, you'll notice when Moshe goes, we'll split this into two classes. When Moshe comes to the Jewish people, it says that they didn't listen to him. It didn't say that they didn't believe him. They said they did believe him. So they didn't listen to him. Why? Because they said they had kotzer ruach. Very interesting term. It means shortness of breath. They didn't listen to him because they had shortness of breath. This guy wants to take you out of slavery. You've been here for over 200 years. You're crying hysterically because of what they're doing to you. At this point, they were literally killing kids so Paro can bathe in that blood. Because he had leprosy. They told him that this is going to be his way of getting out of it. And they couldn't listen to him. Why not? They said because he had shortness of breath.
He had shortness of breath?
No, the Jews had shortness of breath. What does that mean? So the Ramban says it's like when you're suffering so tremendously and someone says to you, I have a therapy plan for you. 100% it's going to work. But that means that today the pain's not going to end. It's going to take time. So they couldn't hear his words.
Because they're excited?
No, because they were in too much pain.
Too much pain.
They couldn't go another second with that pain.
Oh.
If that meant that even if we're going to leave, but I'm going to be in this pain another day, I can't hear you. I don't hear what you're saying, right? Kotzer Ruach. What's Kotzer Ruach? A person only has shortness of breath when he's scared, right? When a person's in fear, he sets the breathing. Where's that coming from? Following Amunah. Right? You'll notice it says about Hashem, one of the 13 qualities, he's Erech HaPayim. We translate this as patience. That's not what it means.
Erech Hama?
Erech HaPayim.
Payim.
It literally means extended breath. He's like a Yoda master. One of the godly traits is to have long breaths.
Mindful breathing.
Mindful breathing. Mindful breathing. Moshe was trying to tell them, I've got mindful breathing for you. And they're breathing too quick, and they couldn't hear what he was saying.
Like hyperventilating.
Yeah, they were hyperventilating from the pain that they were going through. We need to also understand that Moshe, what did he end up bringing them? The Torah. So we think, why is that so great? It's 613 things I have to do. Doesn't sound like freedom. I was a slave, but at least here I could do whatever I want. Now you're telling me I have to do 613 things. The answer is that these 613 things make you free. These 613. Like for instance, I had a conversation with an intelligent secular woman, right, at a Shabbat table. She was telling me, you know what, she's a Baal Tshuva, and she said, I'll be honest with you, I don't really understand. I know that they said the Torah makes you free. I feel like I'm a slave. I don't feel like I'm free. So I said, let's say for instance, I put on a great Netflix show for you right now. So if you're free, you can watch it if you want, right? So that's what the society makes you think. However, if every time that I put it in front of you, you have to watch it, you can't stop yourself from watching it, that actually means you're a slave. Let's say for instance, because I don't want to see the things that are on that show, I could watch it, but I choose not to, so then I'm really free. Does everybody understand?
Yeah.
Yep.
The Torah really, by giving you these laws, gives you a choice. Whereas before you got these laws, you don't have a choice. If I have a delicious bacon cheeseburger in front of you, and you don't keep by kashrut, right, then you don't have a choice. I'm obviously going to eat that. Why not? But now that I tell you it's not kosher, now I can choose either to eat it or not to eat it. Once you have a choice, that means you're free. So all the laws give you a choice. That means you're now free. Now what you do with that freedom is based on you. But it's very interesting because when Hashem gave Moshe the Torah, and Moshe gave the Jewish people the Torah, right? It said that Moshe engraved the Torah on these stones. What's the word for engraved?
In Hebrew?
Yeah. Okay. It comes from the word cherut. Cherut literally means freedom. But the root of the word cherut means to engrave. Okay? So the Torah learns out from this that the Torah itself is called freedom. It was engraved in the stones, meaning freedom was engraved in the stones. That's why the word for engraved and freedom is the same word. So what he was bringing them was freedom. Meaning they're in Mitzrayim, aka the secular world. And they're driven by all of their lusts and all of their passions and all of the luxuries of the physical world. And they find themselves not feeling like they have control of their life. And Moshe says, you have a choice. I'm bringing you freedom. It's called the Torah. It's called the 613 mitzvot. They're going to make you free. Very interestingly, Rav Nachman says Moshe so embodied the Torah that his name, Moshe Rabbeinu, the gematria of that name, Moshe Rabbeinu, is 613. He is the 613 mitzvot. He says, I'm going to make you free by giving you me. I'm giving you the Torah. I'm giving you the truth. And with the truth, you'll be free. Right? This whole concept of exile, though, has to happen. The suffering always has to take place before you leave. And I guess we'll discuss this next week. That, in fact, the exile is good. You can keep it on for a second because I want to see if people have questions.
All right.
The exile is good, and it's going to bring something out of us, which we're going to speak about Bezrat Hashem in 2 weeks. It's going to bring out positive qualities that were in potential for you. They were laden, they were hidden, and it only comes out because of the exile. And we're going to see that, in fact, we have to go through these, so to speak, birth pangs before we can give birth to our true self. And in that way, it's good. But I'll tell you just very quickly, you'll notice in the beginning of creation, right, they said everything that happened in the beginning is a sign for the future. So this whole thing of going into exile, it being dark, and us going through the suffering, and then having Mashiach, Moshe, come and redeem us, it's got to be in the beginning. And it is. In the very beginning of the Torah, it says that Hashem creates the world. And the very next pasuk says, and the world was tohu v'vohu. It was chaos, and it was desolate, it was void, and darkness hovered over the face of the earth. There's 4 different phrases, connected the 4 different exiles. And the very next pasuk is, and the Ruach of Elokim marchefet al panei tahom. That the Ruach of Elokim, the Spirit of Hashem, was hovering over the water. And what does the rabbis teach that is? It's Mashiach. Meaning that even though Hashem made the world desolate and dark and difficult and challenging, you should know that hovering over the water is the Ruach of Mashiach. And that was created before the darkness. So who's the Ruach of Mashiach that's hovering over water?
Hashem.
Moshe.
Oh. You just said it's Elokim.
And the Ruach of Elokim, the Spirit of Hashem. The Ruach of Elokim is hovering over the water. Where do they find Moshe?
In the water.
In the water.
Oh.
Right? He's the Mashiach. He's the one who saves us. What is this whole concept of the Ruach of Elokim is hovering over the water? Meaning the redemption is hovering over the truth. Your exile is because of lies. So who's going to save you from the lies? Only the person who's holding on to the truth. And that's the true tzaddik. And this is Moshe. And we're going to speak next week about how to connect to this truth in our life so we can leave the exile ourselves. How do we get out? And also to see the good and to realize that really it's the best thing that could possibly happen to us, that we have to go through all these things. Does anybody have any questions? I know we spoke a lot about a lot of things tonight. Anything based on what we spoke about tonight? Anybody have any questions?
How long does it take to uproot the animals? Or like?
It's going to take your life. A lifetime. But you could literally be a different human being in a few months.
Just through people.
Just through it.
Just by talking to Hashem.
Just by talking to Hashem every single day for an hour.
Not what, 30 minutes is sufficient.
It's good for where you're at. If you're holding at 30 minutes, bump it up.
If we get like 10 minutes.
No, it's not that lucky. It's not that lucky. I wanted to. This is what I wanted to tell you.
1 hour.
So I want to explain to you when you feel like you don't have time. So it's not true. Okay, I know that you're all watching YouTube videos on your phone. Okay, not true. Okay,
Sure.
I know that you're all spending
Stereotype.
time doing things that you don't need to be doing. Okay.
Yeah, looking at my phone through all the pictures 100 times.
Okay, good. There you go. So what do you say to yourself? I can't speak to Hashem for an hour. I have work to do. I have this to do. So this is all paro inside of you. The truth is, you have all the time in the world to speak to Hashem. We don't feel like that because what is the main tool of paro, of the Yetzer Hara? Stay busy. Stay busy. Work. And even when I go to speak to Hashem, I can't sit here and do this. This is a waste of time. I'm a mooch right now. I'm like living off the government. I need to be working right now. You know who's telling you that? It's your Yetzer Hara. The Ramchal says very clearly, and he wasn't even Hasidic, he says that the key to you leaving your own personal exile is to spend time every day completely by yourself, talking to Hashem. Because he says what's going to happen is that when you're away from the noise, when you're away from the world, when you're away from Mitzrayim, you're going to be able to connect to your truth. And it's not going to be impinged by society and by pressures. And because you're going to be able to connect to that truth, and you're doing it every day, that's going to force a change, because what you're really connecting to is the Moshe that's inside of you. The whole concept of Moshe is he is your godly soul. Right? We said that Paro is your Yetzer Hara. Who's Moshe? He's your godly soul. And in the end, he's going to come to redeem you. But you're only able to hear him when you don't have shortness of breath.
Yeah, afraid.
Yeah. When you're not fear, when you don't have anxiety, when you don't have pressure. When can you do that? Yibodadu. This morning I woke up at 4 a.m. I drove to the forest. I spoke to Hashem for an hour before I started my day, because I knew I wouldn't have the rest of the day. And it's so calm, and it's so peaceful, and I'm not worried, and everything is good, and I'm able to have an honest conversation with myself. And because I do it in the beginning of the day, it frames the whole day. Right? It's like, imagine you went to like a motivational speaker in the beginning of the day. So now all of a sudden, the whole way you're looking at the day is completely different. It's not like, oh, I woke up, I have to go to the bathroom, I have to get breakfast, I have to do my hair, I have to go to work. So what is that? Paro, paro, paro. Busy, 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 busy. You never had a chance to check in with yourself. Who am I today? What am I doing today? What am I here for? Am I here for a purpose? Right? You're not able to ask yourself that question. You need to ask yourself that question every day. What am I doing here today? Yeah.
Okay, you can tell me if this is too much for tonight, but I know the idea is that at a specific year, in a certain amount of time, Mashiach will come, but what does that have to do if we're not necessarily working on ourselves and we're not where we're supposed to be? And is it in our control, or is it just going to happen at some point?
So it's both. Either we expedite the process by Bezrat Hashem all taking these teachings and living with it, and then he'll come much sooner, or he's going to come at the designated time.
Is that going to be worse for us if we don't deserve it, if we don't bring it ourselves?
And the birth pangs will be more difficult. It's like the Jews, that they had to cry out because of the pain. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to become physical slaves. It means that our emotional pain and our psychological pain, our loss of self will be so intense. The concealment will be so intense that we're going to need help. Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Like in the beginning, you were talking about how everything is like hidden.
Yes.
Kind of, and you're like, oh, we think that we're close to the truth, but we're really not uncovering it. So what does that mean? That like whatever we're doing, all our efforts, whatever the mitzvah is, like, is that like we're nothing?
No. Every mitzvah you do has unbelievable schar and reward, and you can't even possibly fathom what you do when you do a mitzvah. But there's a body of the mitzvah and there's a soul of the mitzvah. When you do the mitzvah and you don't know the inner reality of the mitzvah, you're only connecting to the body of the mitzvah. You don't experience the soul of the mitzvah. That's why the mitzvah itself is not making you happy and it feels like a burden. So part of Chassidus and part of learning the deeper teachings of the Torah is it's revealing the soul of the Torah. We're not just dealing with the body of the Torah anymore. And Rav Nachman says very clearly that at the end of time, the soul of the Torah is what needs to be revealed, because the souls that are going to come out at the end, they're only going to be awakened when they get the soul of the Torah.
Wait, repeat that?
That the souls at the end of time, we're not going to be like chilling with the body of the Torah. We're not going to feel excited and inspired by just learning the Torah on the face value of it, when maybe generations in the past could have, because our soul, the quality of our soul is different. And therefore, the quality of the soul is different, and therefore, we need something to ignite our soul. And that comes in the form of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings and the Arizal's teachings to awaken us.
So his Bodhidut helps us to connect to the mitzvot on a deeper level?
Bodhidut helps you connect to your inner self on a deeper level.
So what do you mean? Like, what about the mitzvot? Like, how do you get to the soul of the mitzvot?
So first you have to learn about what they really are in their essence. We could speak about that. But also just simply when you do your Bodhidut, Hashem, help me not just do the mitzvah by rote. Help me to know the essence of the mitzvah. Help me to connect to the essence of the mitzvah.
I was going to let you know, you have to take steps to learn.
Okay, but I'm explaining to you that, first of all, just psychologically, practically, by you starting your day by saying that, you're now going to feel compelled to now look into it.
Hmm.
Whereas otherwise, if you just have it in your mind, like, you know what, I really one day I should try this, and you never get to it. Because speech is what makes it real. Speech is your method for actualizing your potential. So whatever you want to do that's a potential for you, when you speak it, it becomes a reality. And Hashem is going to place situations and opportunities in your life through your speaking it out, because you're creating vessels. Rav Nachman says every time that you pray for things, you create vessels for it. Meaning Hashem is always pouring down, so to speak, that answer to your question, but because you never asked it, you have no way to perceive it.
Interesting.
But when you pray for it, you're going to create vessels so that when it comes, you're like, oh, this is what I prayed for this morning. This is what I was asking for. This is what I was looking for. Any other? Yes.
So, you were saying that we should be afraid of Hashem. Why?
Okay, great question.
So cute.
It's a great question. I'm a Baal Tshuva. I had a very hard time with this concept.
She's so cute.
Um,
Why should we be afraid of Hashem?
the fear of Hashem is very different than the fear that, like, you feel, like, let's say when your parents, like, don't want you to have candy anymore, and then you sneak it in anyway, you know, and then you're scared that they're in the other room and they're gonna come after you, so you quickly get it. So that's not called Yirat Hashem. Fear of Hashem is very peaceful. It's very serene. It's more like awe. I don't know if you ever seen, like, has your family ever taken you to, like, Niagara Falls or to something in nature that's very beautiful, and you're so overwhelmed by it that you, like, so to speak, you can't speak or you can't move? You're very young, but you ever had anything like that? Kind of, okay. So yira is not fear. Pachad means like anxiety. Yira is not pachad. Yira is not anxiety. You don't feel anxiety from this fear. You feel peace from this fear. This is a fear. This fear of Hashem is an awe. That
Like a
because
wow.
you're so in awe of Hashem and how beautiful He is and how great He is and how much He's doing for you, so you don't fear anything else.
You know how great he is from that.
Yeah.
You see his magnificent creatures, creations, whatever.
Yeah, that, and then you get yira from that. Right?
I like that explanation.
Yeah, so you start to. This is also part of the teachings of Chassidut. You know, we have a very important mitzvah of yira. It's the foundation of all the mitzvot. But fear of Hashem, that sounds like Christian almost. You know, what is it? And it's not pachad. It's not fear. It's an awe. It's like you're just so in awe of Him. Now, obviously, how can you get to the point to be so in awe of Him? You have to know the truth. You have to know how much He's doing for you. You have to know how many wheels He's turning, and you have to know all the hashgacha pratit that's happening to you, and you have to be very connected to Him to get to that level. You have to be pure. So, but that year that you feel is the best feeling in the world. When you feel like, wow, Hashem is doing everything, you feel such peace. That's called yira.
Because you're not in control.
Yes, but it's a good not in control, because Hashem's in control. Right? Like, I know a person, he is anxious all the time, and he feels such tremendous negative emotions from this anxiety and all. But when he gets stuck in traffic, he's cool as a cucumber. And he's the one calming his wife down and his family down. And he says, why? Because I know that I can't control this. I said, what if I told you it was like that all the time? You know that it's like that all the time. It's always like that. And he's like, no, I don't want to believe that, because if I believe that, that means that, like, Hashem's in control, it means that I don't have free will. And he had like a whole nervous breakdown. But the truth is, we all really want that, and that's actually what's taking place. Somehow, even though I have free will and I have a choice, everything happens according to whatever Hashem wants. And when you live with that reality, that's called yira. That's why it's important to fear Hashem, because you actually can't love Hashem without, like, for instance, your parents, right? The love that you have for them, I don't know if you're going to understand this yet, but the love that you have for them will only be real when you respect them. Because if you don't respect them and you just love them, so that love is more, I like them. Love comes from knowing the person, right? If I love my wife, if I say I love my wife because of how she makes me feel, so what happens when she stops making me feel like that? So then I don't love her anymore, so that's not love. I liked her, right? What is love? Love is I know her. And I don't love her because of how she makes me feel. I love her because of how she is. So when we love Hashem, we don't love Hashem for what He does for us necessarily. A deeper love than that is because we know Him. So because we got to know Him, we love Him. That love comes from yira, though. It's actually in the first word of the Torah. And then we'll get to the last question and then we'll finish.
It's more of like a comment.
Comment.
You just said.
Okay, go ahead.
Just interestingly, I recently heard on the Chabad calendar, there's Yud Tet Kislev. There's a huge
Yes.
celebration when the Alter Rebbe was freed from prison,
He was the first Rebbe of Chabad.
and there's this idea that everything that happens in the physical world is mirrored in the spiritual world, and so his physical freedom really symbolized that Chassidut was now available to be studied, and it's because now in today's day, kind of what you were saying, that this suffering that we now have, it requires a deeper level of knowing Hashem, and the most
Right.
intimate text that shows us all of his ratzon and what he wants is in Chassidus.
Right.
And so, and again, to love him, we need to know what we're loving. Who
Right.
is Hashem?
Right.
And that's Chassidut.
Very good. Yes, I agree with you 100%. What you said is golden.
Well,
Yeah, I wanted to say one other thing.
Something.
Sorry. Oh yeah, the first word in the Torah is Bereshit. If you flip the letters around, it's Yira Shabbat. Shabbat represents Emunah, and Yira is this awe that we're talking about. And we know that whatever is in the beginning is really the goal for the end. Meaning the whole reason Hashem created the world is for Yira and Shabbat. That we should get to this level that our Emunah is so great, that our awe of Him is so intense, that we're at peace. And that's what Mashiach is going to bring for all of us. So that Hashem, you should come soon in our days, even before our class in 2
Amen.
weeks. And we'll continue. There's a lot more to say now. If you guys have any questions, you think over the next